Welcome to Central Truth, a Ministry of Heart, Inc. with Pastor Dixon. In this podcast and video, I want to discuss something that is really relevant and concerning to me. Most of you are aware that this is Child Month, and the theme for Child Month is DEI, Diversity, Equity and Inclusion. But most of us, this fly over our heads because we don't understand what is diversity, equity and inclusion. The term seems innocent. Diversity, nothing is wrong with that. Equity, everything should be equal. And inclusion includes all. That sounds reasonable. But we need to remember, words and terms are not necessarily what they mean on the surface, especially from a philosophical point of view. What really is diversity, equity, and inclusion? And this strong push to push such ideas in our public schools and start with our children. Now, first of all, let's remember June is also what we call LGBTQ month. This start to ring a bell to you as yet? This is not just coincidental or happenstance. This is planned. When we think of the United States and UNESCO, these things are planned. What is DEI? Why the theme diversity, equity and inclusion with our children? We're going to talk more about that. A lot of us hear the term, and not only that, the disappointing thing about it is church, Christians, pastors supporting this idea and don't understand what it is all about. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just a voice. I'm just a watchman on the wall, just looking out, and we need to pay more attention to things and what is going on, especially parents, what is going on. And the education system is used to propagate a lot of these things. But before we get into the rest of the video, please remember to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, and even leave a comment. Please leave a comment because the comment section help. We can respond and you can have people interacting on the content that was shared, and this will help a lot. So also we like you to leave a comment and himself tell us what you think, and that will greatly help. So now let's get into the content. First of all, to understand DEI, or diversity, equity and inclusion, we have to understand its origin. This origin stimulates from what you call critical theory. And what is critical theory? Critical theory has its background in what you call Marxism, Karl Marx. And by the way, I did my research, and you can also do your research. I'm going to put some links in this video in the description below where you can go and study this. And sometimes we need to do our due diligence and not just accept things because it was just handed down to us. So as I said, critical theory found itself in Marxism, Karl Marx, and it was pushed in 1929 by two main proponents, Horkheimer and Adorno, who became professors at the Frankfurt School, started by Karl Grunsberg, who was a Marxist professor at the University of Vienna. This school was the first Marxist school started or founded in Germany. Now, the idea is based on Marxist philosophy that there are two classes of people, the oppressed and the oppressor, and the haves and the have-nots. Now, the haves are the oppressor is known as the bourgeoisie, the proletariat or the oppressed. Now, in this theory, the oppressor are those who own all the jobs, all the privileged ones. These are the ones who oppress the underclass, the working class, the poorer class. Now, as I said, critical theory found itself in Marxism, and it is based on economical exploits, in that those at the top exploit those at the bottom. So in this theory, based on the Frankfurt School, which eventually died out, but critical theory still remains strong in many of our institutions and our colleges and our universities today. And now it's finding its way in what you call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, in this critical theory, it is said that those at the bottom should protest against those at the top, and those at the bottom are less morally responsible than those at the top, because those at the bottom, because they are oppressed, they are less morally responsible, because those at the top have them in the situation where they are, like slavery. The slave owners were more responsible for those at the bottom, so they need to bring themselves down to the level of the slaves, make everything equal, and as a result of that, they need to bring themselves to the slave, because at the end of the day, they are more moral responsible. Now, as it relates to Karl Marx, it is important for one to know his satanic involvement even before he wrote his famous Communist Manifesto, 1848. Karl Marx was a poet, a playwright, even before he got involved in economical pursuits. And his poems reveal his darkness, the darkness of his soul, his deep involvement in Satanism. He was an avowed atheist, yet believed in Satan, opposed God. And in his writings, you will see he mentioned a being that opposed God, or a being that is reference to Satan. In an interview, Jordan Peterson interviewed Dr. Paul Kengor as they review The Devil and Karl Marx. Now here is some excerpt from the interview.
How much of it is there? How much poetry?
Well, there's quite a bit, and it's deeply disturbing stuff. All right, a lot of it is about the devil, and, quite literally about the devil. It's chilling, right? Thus heaven I forfeited. I know it full well. My heart, once true to God, is chosen for hell.
Right.
1837.
Straight Lucifer from Milton.
Yeah, 1837, that one was. It was one of his first published writings. He would have only been 19 years old at that time. Another one, so it's called The Player, and it was 1841. And here he puts himself, it appears, in the form of this kind of mad violinist who's like frenetically, maniacally sawing away at the violin, and he's summoning up the powers of darkness, and he's doing this in front of his love interest. And the love
as
interest,
one does.
Yeah, right. And the love interest, Robert Payne says, appears to be his girl at the time, Jenny, the girl that he would end up marrying. And he's summoning up the powers of darkness, and she's saying, "Why are you doing this to him?" It's like a Faustian bargain, more in Faust and Goethe and Mephistopheles in a moment. But just to sort of set the table for people who are shocked by what I said about him writing about the devil. So here's what he says in The Player. Here's just one stanza. He tells the girl, "Look now, my blood-dark sword shall stab unerringly within thy soul. The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain, till I go mad and my heart is utterly changed. See the sword, the prince of darkness sold it to me. For he beats the time and gives the signs. Ever more boldly I play the dance of death." And then he plays this sort of Faustian bargain. And but to back up a little bit, that's his poetry from an early age. And Robert Payne, so who wrote the book, the Simon & Schuster book, the New York University Press, said Marx's first love was poetry. And he fancied himself as aspiring to be nothing less than the Goethe of his age, to write the Faust of his age. And Goethe's Faust, of course, the famous character is the Mephistopheles character, the devil, demon character. And as you saw in the book many times.
And Mephistopheles in Faust, that's a character I've done a fair bit of study about. Because, well, there's a motif that's repeated both in Faust 1 and Faust 2. So Mephistopheles in Faust is a variant of the heavenly adversary, right? So he opposes being itself. And his ethos, which Goethe has him state twice, is that the suffering that existence the suffering that's a necessary consequence of existence in its finite and limited manifestation, so our mortal frames, let's say, that suffering is so unbearable and so unconscionable that it would be better if existence itself did not exist.
The video ended on a sad note, demonstrating the twisted and dark mind of Karl Marx. As he mentioned how Karl Marx was enamored by the being Mephistopheles, which was a being founded in the writing of Faust. And this Mephistopheles being is an opposing being. And this opposing being of God, and we know the Bible call him Lucifer, the usurper, the adversary. So Marx, enamored with this Mephistopheles being, which represent the opposer to God, we see that in Marxism oppose the order of society, oppose society, and is not just opposing the order to bring good in society. It's the opposition to destroy everything, to bring it down to the ground, to destroy everything. And we are going to see again, Jordan Peterson, them also comment on this thing. Karl Marx's mind was dark in terms of his social construct. He was not so much opposed the idea of, he was not so much for the idea of, those in the lower class have the opportunity to climb up the ranks of the ladder and make themselves better. No, he wanted those at the lower class to use them to bring down society, and when society is brought down, there's nothing at all left. He was totally for destruction. And when he talk about abolition, and you're going to hear them talk about his idea was the abolition of abolition, meaning totally destroy everything. And we're going to talk more when we talk about critical race theory, and we're going to talk about that when we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay, so what do you make of this conceptually? Now, Marx proclaimed himself an atheist. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the first question you might ask is, well, what the hell does an atheist have to do with Satan? Right. Well, so what do you think about that?
And by the way, he had a favorite line from Mephistopheles, which was, in fact, they said this was Marx's favorite quote. Everything that exists
deserves
that's
the line. Perish. Exactly. That's exactly the line.
Everything that exists deserves to perish.
And that's repeated. It's in Faust 2, too. Yeah.
That's his favorite line. So if someone were to ask me, do you have a favorite quote? Do you have a favorite line? I might give a scripture verse. I might be not afraid, something like that. But Marx said, yes, Mephistopheles, Goethe's Faust. Everything that exists deserves to perish.
That's terrifying.
To perish.
Well, it's terrifying because it truly is the case that as the character of Mephistopheles is revealed in Faust 1 and 2, that's the apotheosis of his philosophy, right? When you really start to understand who Mephistopheles is, that's the final revelation. He's the foe of everything that exists. Now, the rationalization is because of the suffering, or it isn't just the suffering, because there's a Luciferian pride element. Mephistopheles is opposed to the structure of being also because it doesn't meet his standard. Right.
In one of the poems, Marx shouts in the form of Satan, right? I shall howl gigantic curses at mankind. And Robert Payne says, picture Marx standing there in the middle of like a burned down village, a burnt down house, right? The raised REZED building, and flames all around him. Everything that exists deserves to perish, and as if to say, now we can begin, right? He wants to take everything down. He wants to completely level it. And yet all of this, going back to your original point, this is what he was writing before he was doing anything on economics.
Right.
Before he was doing, and also yet at the same time, because I know there might be some Marx biographers who've ignored this. I know that they've ignored it. And they might say, well, it's so early. He did this as one of his first published writings, 1837. He was 19 years old. That's not the real Marx. Well, the one I just read to you, The Player, that's 1841. That was the same year that he started with Bruno Bauer at the University of Bonn as professor. the Archives of Atheism, the Annals of Atheism journal that he started. His peak of writing was really in the 1840s. I mean, they were writing the Communist Manifesto, 1846, 1847, released February 1848. So
it's not that long.
As we just saw, the backdrop to Karl Marx Communist Manifesto in 1847, and also the backdrop to Das Kapital, which was written between the years of 1867 to 94, when he co-wrote that with Engels. It is clear that the mindset of Marx when he wrote this on the Communist Manifesto, and also the 3-volume book on Das Kapital Against Capitalism, we see the backdrop, the ideology behind these books, a satanic approach to these books. This Luciferian concept and Metamorphosis idea can be seen in the book of Isaiah, chapter 14, from 12 to verse 17, when pride of sin, or better yet, the sin of pride, was found in Lucifer, and he wanted to usurp his authority over God, and as a result of that, he was cast out. And because he knows his destruction is inevitable, he seeks to destroy everything that God created. He seeks to destroy the order, thus introduce sin in the world. As such, the natural order is totally decaying. And this is the whole purpose of Satan. His idea is not to reign so much, because he knows his end is inevitable, but his idea is to totally destroy what God has created. And Karl Marx picked up on this thing. As I said, he was so fascinated with the idea of Satan, and his only thing is to bring down the natural order. Now, it is interesting to note that philosophical and political and social ideas such as Nazism, and even the political concept of monarchism, has fallen, you can say. And most of it, especially monarchism, is just a figurehead. But yet, even though democracy, capitalism is reigning strong, especially in the West, it has never able to shake the concept of Marxism and communism. Now, listen to this interview Jordan Peterson had with Ayaan Hirsi Ali as they discuss God, Marxism, and the fall of the West.
There's a Marxist-like spirit that inverts the French Revolution soon after it occurs. And that was well before Marx. And I've been thinking more archetypally, let's say, in relationship to fundamental stories, that Marxism is a variant, Marxism versus capitalism, let's say, as a variant of the story of Cain and Abel, right? Because Cain and Abel is really the first victim-victimizer narrative. And it basically presents the human moral landscape, because it's the first story about human beings in history, right? Because Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, let's say. Cain and Abel are the first two human beings that are born in the world of history. And they develop modes of being that are antithetical to one another, with Cain being the oppressed, angry, bitter, malevolent, murderous, and then genocidal victim, and Abel being the successful, right? The successful individual who strives forward, aims up, and makes the proper sacrifices. Now, that's presented in the biblical corpus as the fundamental spiritual division and Cain's failure to make the proper offering and then his rebellion against God. Like, there's a Luciferian touch to that, and it's definitely something that attracted Marx, because Marx was a admirer of Mephistopheles, of Goethe's Mephistopheles, and Mephistopheles was the variant of the usurping spirit whose motivation was nothing but destruction. You know, you talked about the attack on all the levels of subsidiary society simultaneously, right? I mean, the Marxists definitely planned that. We can't have marriage because men and women are in a power battle. We can't have families because the family is a patriarchal, oppressive institution. We can't have communities because all power should be ceded to the state, etc. But it seems to me that all of that has that roots in that fundamental antagonism that's laid out initially in the story of Cain and Abel. And what we are seeing is we're seeing variants of that story play out, and also at an accelerated rate because of the rate of technological change. So I've been thinking about those things a lot. That's what I've been lecturing about on this last tour. And in part, that's what my new book is about. So I'm curious about your reaction, first of all, to the idea of a metastasizing Marxism, and then to the idea that Marxism itself is a variant of it's a retelling of a more fundamental story.
So fascinating, and I'm glad you're doing this. Okay, so in 1989, I think there is this sense, the winners, those who are victorious, maybe you want to say, you were comparing Cain and Abel, you can say, those who are victorious make one big mistake, in my view, after 1989, which is they forget about it. They think we've won this.
Right. History's over.
History is over. Let's move on. For the loser, history is never over. For the loser, history begins when he loses. He has to shake off all of this and come up and come back. And they come back now with this idea of identity groups, of culture. And the idea is forensically scrutinized, and it becomes, after we fully understand what Hitler's ideas were, that this is something that would never and should never happen again. Now, this is something we did not do to communism.
Right. Definitely not, yeah.
After the fall of the Soviet Union, there was no campaign of decommunization or demarxification of everything and anything. There was no reckoning. So up until, I think, 2002, 2003, we were still finding individuals who had been found to be active or sympathizers with Hitler. We were trying them still. We were still trying to go after them and put them in jail. But we never did anything of the sort with Marxism. So the first thing I noticed, the big thing is, of course, this terrible idea keeps recurring, and it metastasizes and it manifests itself in different ways, because for the young generations, there never really has been here. This is what Marxism led to. The death toll. I mean, we all have been schooled in how many people actually died, but more interesting, I think more fascinating, is the Nazi psyche. Do you know, we explored it to the point that right now, there are conversations we can't have without everyone referencing Nazism. In fact, I think one of the reasons why Europe is completely paralyzed when it comes to the issue of immigration is because there is this terror, this fear that they might fall again into that nasty collective madness of putting people in concentration camps. We haven't done that to Marx. We haven't done ideas of Marx in communism, and I think we are a bit on the later side.
Interesting. We will hear more about what both Jordan Peterson and Ian Ali has to say. Now, with that said, we will now transition into what is critical race theory. We look at critical theory, now we're going to see what is critical race theory. Now remember, critical race theory, the word critical has nothing to do in critiquing race. Critical race theory just borrowed the term critical from critical theory. And really the concept of critical race theory is look at life through racism, through gender, basically through groups instead of individuals. Like capitalism is based on the idea of a person or individual go out there, work whatever, work hard and climb the economical ladder. But when we look at critical race theory, the concept is because Marx, as Marxism said, because one group suppress the other, those who are oppressed have moral rights, and their moral rights is more superior than their oppressor. So as a result of that, instead of adopting a capitalistic idea in that the individual will go out, work hard, dedicate themselves and build their wealth and improve their social status, critical race theory said, well, it is because of your race you have been suppressed, and because of your gender you have been suppressed, and because of the idea of the nuclear family you have been suppressed. So critical race theory whole premise is not based on facts, is based on feelings, is based on the idea of blaming others for your failures, blaming others for your faults. So as a result, let's go out there and destroy the family, especially those who don't have family values. Let's destroy the family. The family is just an idea. There is no merit to it. It's just an idea that society, a construct that society came up with. Let's destroy the family. The family is not needed. And first of all, we see that in feminism. It started in feminism. The first thing is, well, women are oppressed, and because women are oppressed, the thing is, we are going to neutralize the men. Men is no longer the leader of the home. Women, we can lead just as much as men, so we're going to destroy the natural order. Whether it is factual, they don't care.
So there's this clip going viral online of a dozen women being asked the following question: do we need men? Most answered very quickly, no. And only one said she thought women needed a man in their lives, only one. But when men were asked a similar question, do we need women, most of them said yes. So why do you think that is?
Because men are useless. I mean, love it. And by the way, I want to differentiate between straight men and gay men, because I think I would die without gay men. Nobody can gossip like gay men. Nobody can help you accessorize like gay men. Nobody can help you keep you from doing harm to yourself like gay men.
And let me say this: critical race theory, CRT, is not based on facts or historical evidence. Is based on feeling, what you feel. They don't care about what the outcome might be. They don't care about what the facts might be. It's how a person feel, and his feeling is reality. He doesn't have to prove it. Once they think it, the feeling is reality. Now it's like postmodernism, but it's a little further than postmodernism, and we're going to see some more about this. So if you oppose the nuclear family, let's break it down. Let's break down the family. The family is not necessary, so let's get rid of men. Women could do as much as men, and we will see that in feminism. But look at what's going on in society: the absentee of men from the home. You see how society is crumbling. In relation to parenting, children have just as much rights as parents. Also, let the children rebel against the parents. The parents them don't have rights. Even institutions like school and this thing cannot discipline children. Therefore, children have just as much rights as the parents. So therefore, by doing that, we destroy the idea of the nuclear family. Again, look at what it has brought us. Let's destroy the concept of marriage, the idea of marriage. Marriage is not necessary. Marriage is not, let's destroy the idea of marriage. Marriage, again, is a social construct derived by those who have the upper class to suppress those in the lower class. Let's destroy marriage. So we see the number one attack in critical race theory is the family.
This story is going to sound crazy, like really crazy.
Marriage rates have been declining since the 70s, and 2021 was the first year that more children were born out of wedlock than in it.
For the first time ever since records began, 50.1% of women are childless by 30.
The U.S. fertility rate has plummeted for the past 15 years.
But people are choosing to get married later or live together beforehand, or even not getting married at all.
The nuclear family has almost been destroyed in the United States. You know, how many kids come from, two-parent household with both parents that were their biological parent?
18%. People get married on average like 10 years later now than they did.
It's destroying the country.
If there is one thing that is apocalyptically different about our generation compared to every single other generation in history, it is the near total disintegration of the family unit, at the very least in the Western world.
In my research, I came across some content from Jamie Bombrick. He is a young Christian influencer who is making some pretty good content. His theme for his YouTube channel is church culture and banter. He seems to have a good grip on the culture and the impact on Christianity. What is going on in the church, both socially and morally. Also has an apologetic view of what Christianity on a whole is facing. So I encourage you to go and look at his YouTube channel. Also listen to the entire video he has on the crushing downfall of the family. But listen here now to some further excerpt from this video.
So how did it happen? Let me tell you, it was intentional. We kind of assumed that this was basically accidental, that this was the forces of nature and society and history flowing together, and we've got technological advancement and we've got capitalism and the Industrial Revolution and whatever has happened there, and that this was kind of just an automatic response to changing times. We would think that there's no real cause behind it, no real reason for it. It is as incomprehensible and as hard to explain as the stars in the heavens or the words in Joe Biden's mouth.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to
Picture the scene. You're in the late 1960s. You've been invited to a meeting and you walk in. And at the start, the woman who's leading it stands up. But instead of saying something like, "Hello everyone, how are we doing? Let's get started," something sane and human.
I am human.
Instead, she leads everyone in the following call and response chant. This is my woman costume, by the way. Why are we here today? To make revolution! Strong start, I like it. What kind of revolution? The cultural revolution. Cultural revolution? How do we make cultural revolution? By destroying the American family. Okay. How do we destroy the family? By destroying the American patriarch. Sorry, what? How do we destroy the American patriarch? By taking away his power. Me? How do we destroy his power? By destroying monogamy. How do we destroy monogamy? By promoting promiscuity, eroticism, prostitution, and homosexuality. Now, if I told you I went to a meeting like that, you would either not believe me, or you would say, what kind of crazy satanic pagan cult were you trying to join? But here's the thing, this wasn't that kind of group. In fact, this was the standard opening at the meetings of, and I kid you not, the National Organization for Women. Now, the person leading these meetings was a woman called Kate Millett, and just in case the demonic chanting didn't give it away, she was not a very good person. And we have all of these issues that we could get into. One of her big passions in life was ensuring that children could sleep with adults, and she felt that parents stopping their children from sleeping with grown-ups was an act of patriarchy, which, you know, a flipping man to that. But all of that insanity didn't stop her from becoming a feminist icon and winning a whole bunch of awards. That's a strange choice, ladies, I'm gonna be honest with you.
That's very odd.
But what was she up to? What was she trying to achieve? She says it herself, it's right out there in the open. She was trying to achieve a revolution. Now, her ideas were not entirely original. If you go back in history, she drew from Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And those guys recognized something which they were explicit about in the Communist Manifesto. Namely that in order for communism to succeed, the family needs to be abolished. No more parents! If people are trying to raise kids, they're much less likely to let the government take all of their stuff. And so Millett is here, and she is part of a group of people who, in the 1960s, recognized that economic Marxism was not likely to succeed. And so they took those ideas and they developed them further into what is known as cultural Marxism. And what's cultural Marxism? Let me explain. Imagine economic Marxism as like a single blade on a saw. I don't have a saw, I have a knife, okay? But imagine it's a saw, and you're attempting to chop down a tree with that saw, with this single blade. The problem is that every time the economy improves, that saw gets blunter. People who are well fed, who have cars and shelter and are not dying on the streets are much less likely to go for a bloody revolution. Rather not. And so what people do is they take this idea, but they take it further, and they say we don't just need one blade in order to splinter society and bring about the revolution, we need to have multiple. And the advantage of that is that when one blade gets weaker, the others can kick in and bring about and keep driving that revolutionary force. But they run into the same opposition in this area of family. Marx and Engels believed that the nuclear family was a product of capitalism, and what we see in cultural Marxism is that the nuclear family is described as many things. It's considered to be a product of patriarchy, of privilege, of white supremacy, of homophobia. Incorrect. Now, you would think that a bunch of people chanting about the destruction of the family and cultural revolution in a basement would go absolutely nowhere. Not gonna work. And of course, I'm not saying that the National Organization for Women was the sole driver of this, but what I am saying is this. There were multiple groups of people doing this kind of thing. There were multiple groups of people in different areas of society intentionally advancing the same agenda to destroy the family. The destruction of the family did not happen by accident. It has been driven by ideologues and activists across the Western world. And so a bunch of people chanting in a basement sounds insane, but when you get enough people and they buy in and they catch on to those ideas, these things can spread. So though that might sound insane, though it might sound crazy, look around you. That revolution has happened. They've succeeded in doing this.
So now we see, based on Bombrick, the intentional destruction of the family and society. So all this, what we see going on is an intentionality, and they use words and hide their meaning behind well-intentioned words. They hide their meaning by well-intentioned words. As I said, to these people, words are not what they seem to think they are. Diversity does not mean what we think it really means. Equity does not think what we really means. And inclusivity does not really mean what we think we mean. We need to find out the philosophical underpinnings of these words and the angles that they are coming from. The next step after that, race. The idea is because the whites were in higher position, they determine society. We, the blacks, we are going to destroy everything that they they built, every idea, every philosophy. I am not saying everything they do is right. Those that are wrong, we correct. And we correct, and nothing is wrong with that. But you cannot bring down everything, because not everything that they set up, it's wrong. Because when we look at Western civilization, also it goes beyond race, but we look at everything through race. Let's bring down the idea of education as we know it, the merit-based system in education. Let's bring down the idea of religion, Christianity, the values of Christianity. You know, that's a construct. Let's oppose that. Let's bring it down. Let's bring down all the pillars that our society was built on. Knock them down and bring down society, and use the idea of race to do that.
All the laws we've passed don't count for much if they're not enforced. Rights have to exist in practice, not just on paper. Laws have to be backed up with resources and political will. And deep-seated cultural codes, religious beliefs, and structural biases have to be changed.
Now the next is gender. Gender is not binary. There's no such thing as only male and female. How you think? If you feel like you are a male, a female. If you're female and you feel like you are male, you are male. If you are male and you feel like you're female, you are a female. Nothing based on facts, nothing based on science. How you feel. In other words, let's destroy the idea, the construct of family. Let's destroy the idea of gender. Let's destroy the idea. And guess what? You know what all these attacking? The first 3 chapters of the book of Genesis. Again, critical race theory, critical theory, LGBTQ. Do you know also you have critical LGBTQ theory? The idea of gender. Destroy gender. There's no such thing as gender. Male now could go in the female bathroom. If a male decide he feel like he is a female, so he could go in the female bathroom. And female could come in the male bathroom if they feel like they are a male. You see the problem?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and only ladies and gentlemen it is and shall always be. I am an 18-year-old high school student and wanted to take this time to bring to your attention the current issue with biological men claiming they are women and in turn truly believing that they are entitled to use women's spaces. There was an incident within our district that occurred recently regarding a transgender woman who really is a biological man having an altercation with a young woman at MLK High School. It was infuriating when I had seen the video on social media, but what was detrimental to this is the fact that this man is and has been using the women's restroom and locker room. Firstly, the question we must address is why are we affirming the mental confusion of this boy and putting the safety of women in jeopardy by allowing mentally confused men to use the women's spaces? Of course, any male who claims he is a woman will accept it, but what about the women? What about the true girls like myself who are female down to our DNA? Why don't we ever get a say in whether or not we are comfortable with this? The truth is, we aren't. The majority of us aren't, and yet nothing has been done to protect the safety of these women. I will conclude with this. It all starts with you. You are in charge of the safety of us women and the parent and the kids of our parents. So please do something about it. Thank you.
And these are the things they want to push in schools and the educational system as we know it before. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let's include everything. In other words, the idea is, hey, there is no gender is not binding. I mean, homosexuality and all these things, they are not of the natural order. Therefore, the family structure of male and female, of marriage and all these things is against LGBTQ, so we have to bring it down. We have to bring down the natural order, and this is what diversity, equity and inclusion is all about. in our education system was a merit-based system. Everybody is equal. You have an equal opportunity to go to school and get an education. But now, when we talk about equity does not mean equal. Equity means outcomes. Therefore, when everything was based on merit, everyone have the opportunity to go to school, get an education, and in the education, now based on your ability, because you outperform the others, you're being hated, and therefore the system has to create the exams, the tests, so everybody pass. There is no competition. We're not looking for the best and the brightest anymore. Everybody pass, so no one could criticize each other. That's what it's all about. And let me tell you something, our system, our education system, have no clue what this thing is all about. Not only that, the church has no clue what this is all about. We hear these words, diversity. We hear this word, equity. We hear these words, inclusion. It sounds good. Let me tell you something. Satan masquerade himself as an angel of light. He covered himself in words. He used nice words to accomplish his dirty deeds. Understand what these are all about.
20 or 50 or even 100 years ago, if you asked someone which of the world's countries was the most diverse, most equitable, and most inclusive, they would have almost certainly answered the United States. Not anymore. What changed? Well, nothing and everything. Nothing in the sense that America is still the opportunity-rich place it's always been. And everything because the progressive left has hijacked those three words, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and turned them into weapons of mass destruction. This DEI trio makes up the neutron bomb that has laid waste to a good part of our educational and corporate institutions. Given the damage that has been done, it might be a good idea to see what these words used to mean and what they mean now. Diversity used to mean that people of different backgrounds were free to join a group or association. Equity used to mean enforcing equal standards for all individuals in groups. Inclusion used to mean allowing people of every background and identity to participate in a group or association. Now, in their DEI context, these words all mean one thing: applying unequal standards to ensure preferential outcomes for individuals and groups based on race, sex, and gender identity. The DEI movement is not about a sincere desire to make educational or corporate institutions more diverse, more equitable, or more inclusive. If you don't believe me, try having an open discussion on your company message board or at your next DEI seminar about why the same standards should apply to everyone, everywhere, regardless of race, sex, or gender identity. Try that and you know what will happen. You'll be shouted down, shunned, reprimanded, and maybe fired. DEI is ultimately about only one thing: advancing those who are not white, heterosexual, and male at the expense of white, heterosexual men, regardless of their respective qualifications. If you say, well, that's fine, because white, heterosexual men had too many advantages for too long, then I would ask, what about all the women, gays, blacks, and Latinos who were born to privilege? Should they be recipients of DEI special preferences? And when do we know we've reached a DEI endpoint? When do we know that everything is finally diverse, equitable, and inclusive?
DEI, it's not looking good for DEI. A bunch of people on Twitter are talking about DEI. Elon Musk talked about it. Oklahoma governor signs order effectively banning diversity programs at public colleges, okay?
Finally, somebody's stepping up.
Yes, let me read this story.
I got the biggest applause from the crowd.
Let's go.
Interesting.
Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt signed an executive order effectively banning diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI programs at public colleges and agencies, prohibiting them from state funds or resources for DEI initiatives, and ordering the dismissal of non-critical personnel. This order is effective immediately with compliance expected by May 31st of 2024. Charlie, what do you think about the story?
I think it's amazing. I think every red state governor should follow suit. Anybody in power should get rid of DEI immediately. DEI is a Marxist program that's infiltrated. It is anti-white, institutionalized, and Elon Musk is now one of the most anti-DEI spokespeople of the West, and praise God for Elon of doing that. He says DEI should be rearranged to DIE. Because it is saying it is dying. Look, Elon Musk calls diversity, equity, inclusion morally wrong. Propaganda words for racism, sexism. Changing the target class doesn't make it right. Good for you, Elon Musk. We need.
You know, they say there's a difference between perception and reality. For the people that aren't really following what's going on with DEI or ESG, everything that's sort of, you know, in our world, for the average person, when they hear diversity, it's like, all right, cool, diversity, that's great. Yeah. Equity, yeah, we all want a piece of equity. Yeah, it's great.
That's a different
Inclusion, exactly. Inclusion, let's be included.
I want to be included.
So on the surface, like, you know, if you're a liberal college girl, like whatever, like most people aren't paying attention to policies. They're paying attention to personality and just basically optics. Where did people give people the reality of what this is? Meaning the average person out there thinks it's great. Charlie, how racist of you to basically say DEI is bad.
Yeah.
What would you say to those people?
Well, I mean, first of all, understand what DEI actually is. It's Marxism by another name. It is race Marxism. It is trying to destroy what exists, strip it down, and put in a completely different type of society. It is race it's race preference. And so you have to ask somebody, do you think your skin color matters to your worth? It's one of the most important, simple, honest questions in America today. If yes, you're a bigot. I have no time for you. You should be like, no, actually your skin color doesn't matter that much. Of course there's racial differences. They don't matter actually really at all. They don't matter about your character or your soul or your agency. Like, and by the way, how shallow. I mean, people are much deeper than how they look, like a lot deeper. And just to kind of put people back into sectarian tribes is regression. So what DEI does, it is re-tribalizing society into a new India-style caste system where you can never escape. No matter how much good you do, no matter how much you study, no matter how early you work, no matter how much you try to improve your life, you're trapped. You're in an open-air prison. DEI creates America into an open-air prison that if you're white, you can never escape it. You have to constantly apologize. You have to constantly go on a knee. And it's like, by the way, if you want to live in that type of country, go to South Africa. Literally, that whole country is built on DEI and CRT. It's an entire country that is based on racial separation and revenge against whites. They have political rallies where they say, kill the Boer. Kill the Boer. The whole country is built on racial resentment. The revival that will come to this country, and PBD, you're doing a great job helping lead, and what we're doing here at America Fest and Turning Point USA, the revival will go back to a preference on meritocracy. Character, not skin color. Agency, not tribe. That has always been what has made America different and exceptional.
Well said, Charlie. How much similarity, like when you hear BLM, Black Lives Matter, on the surface, it's like, yeah, of course they matter. But the reality was a Marxist organization that was basically trying to tear down the nuclear family.
Of course it is.
Is that basically the parallel to DEI?
And again, don't take my word for it. Look at Elon Musk. DEI must die. The point was to end discrimination, not replace it with a different discrimination. That's the world's wealthiest man. He's saying it because it's true. It's not like he has to go make more money or he's going to win favor or friends. And look, they took advantage of the best intentions of the American people. To your point, inclusion. Who wants to be non-inclusive?
Of course.
Right? Inclusion. Or diversity. Now, they never actually mean diversity because they want everyone to look different but think the same. They don't mean it. They don't believe in intellectual diversity or viewpoint diversity or religious diversity. They want just skin color diversity.
Bingo.
And they want ideological totalitarianism. That's the most important thing. So, look, DEI is against. DEI is a virus, and I'll say this, and people hate when I say it, but it's true. DEI is a much more dangerous virus to America than COVID ever was. And DEI is now lasting much longer than COVID. And the top priority of this conference and our podcast and all of us together is to unite our forces. If you're a libertarian, conservative, Democrat, I don't care. We must unite and kick the DEI virus out of America as quickly as possible.
Listen to what other theologians such as John MacArthur and Voddie has to say concerning DEI and critical race theory.
Critical race theory is part of a broader movement, a critical social justice movement. And the social justice movement has really been gaining traction in the last several years among Christians, among evangelicals, among Roman Catholics. It's been gaining traction. And part of the reason that it's gaining traction is because it sounds not only good, but it sounds familiar. Social justice movement. Who's not for justice, right? What Christian wouldn't be for justice? Racial injustice. Who wants racial injustice, right? We don't want any kind of racial injustice, least of all racial injustice. And so these ideas and these terminologies sound very familiar to Christians, and they've really gained a foothold. And one of the reasons that they've gained a foothold is that people don't know where they come from. They're not familiar with critical theory. They're not familiar with Marxist conflict theory. They're not familiar with, Antonio Gramsci's concept of hegemony and so on and so forth. They don't know that these are the things that lay beneath these concepts and ideologies. And so a lot of Christians, especially a lot of younger Christians who are, just coming out of the university or are in the university, have really been sort of inundated with these ideas and have sort of, infused them into their Christianity. And in their desire to be altruistic, they've been misguided. And it's caused a great deal of division within many churches and families and organizations and seminaries and so on and so forth. The Southern Baptist Convention, for example, just a couple of years ago, passed a resolution, the infamous Resolution 9, on critical race theory and intersectionality. And it's amazing that, the people who now know what critical race theory is and know what intersectionality is are scratching their heads trying to understand why the conservative Southern Baptist Convention would pass a resolution affirming critical race theory and affirming intersectionality. By the way, last year, the 6 presidents of the Southern Baptist seminaries came out with a statement against critical race theory. This is just a year after the convention passes a resolution in favor of critical race theory. So, these ideas have very much infiltrated the church and have caused a great deal of harm and continue to cause a great deal of harm as people, try to They try to say that this is an argument against people who are against racism and people who are not against racism, people who are fighting against injustice and people who are okay with injustice. And that's a red herring. They're building straw men. It's completely inaccurate. This is about an ideology that has its roots in Marxism versus an ideology that has its roots in the scriptures.
Back in 2018, we assembled, a group of us did, at Herb's House Coffee in Dallas. And the purpose of that meeting was to diagnose, talk about, think through some of the issues related to the social justice movement within evangelicalism. Now, back in 2018, which is just 2 years ago, most evangelical leaders were saying to us, there is no such thing as a social justice agenda in evangelicalism. We were heavily critiqued. The day that we gathered, it was your 79th birthday. We sat at the table, we spent an entire day working through the issues together. And then what emerged from that meeting was the statement on social justice and the gospel. And here we are just 2 years later, and we see massive issues taking place related to social justice, culturally and within evangelical circles. But in that meeting, after I opened up the meeting, talked about some initial things to get the ball rolling, you made a statement. You said that this social justice agenda is more dangerous than any other controversy that you've faced. Perhaps the most dangerous in the last maybe 100 years, but definitely in your lifetime. Do you still believe that to be the case?
There's no question about it. There's no question about it. I think it was Noam Chomsky who said, if you want to start a revolution, come up with a slogan that nobody can reject. Social justice, who would reject that? Black Lives Matter, who would reject that? So the camel's nose is in the tent at that point. Because and then you don't want to be a racist. And you have to realize that people have been mistreated in the past. And so all of that is framed up And what just was so disturbing to me, and that's why I was part of that meeting, and that's why I think that statement is so well done. What was so concerning to me was people were jumping on that bandwagon before they really thought what they were getting into. Because in the first place, I've said this through the years, justice doesn't need an adjective. Justice is justice. Social justice is another term for socialism. It's another term for taking money from one person and handing it to another one. It's basically a euphemism for equality of outcome. You can have equality of opportunity, but you can't guarantee equality of outcome. But social justice wants to guarantee equality of outcome by taking away something that this person has earned and handing it to someone who didn't earn it. So it was just a front for socialism. There were years and years of underlying, underbelly developments to tear down democracy as we know it in America underneath that, and I saw that for whatever reason. Critical race theory, like all critical theory, is iconoclastic. All it wants to do is destroy, destroy, destroy. And there's a simple way to understand that, okay? Here's what I saw coming. We are, as white people, or non-African American people, the culprits in everything that's wrong in this society. And the people who are suffering because we've done them wrong systemically. So pushing this a little further, there's a guy named James Lindsay who's an atheist. Pretty remarkable insights for an atheist. He sees a lot of things that evangelical leaders don't see. Lindsay says, here's the bottom line. And he's an evolutionist. He's saying the notion here is this, that human beings come into the world as a blank slate. They have no innate characteristics and they have no unchanging, immutable characteristics, okay? And even gender. Okay, you come in as a blank slate. You're the only being in the evolutionary chain that has no immutable, innate characteristics. You're just a blank slate. And so the culture will frame you. It'll tell you what gender is acceptable, what behavior is acceptable, and so forth. So the idea is strikes a blow against God as creator, creating us in his own image. We bear the mark of God, and those are immutable characteristics. And he created the male and female, and that too is immutable. But we can see in the transgender movement that one has to be attacked overtly because it's so stupid. So if you believe that everybody comes in as this blank slate, I read a story about a woman who had a baby girl, but she didn't want the child to be influenced as to gender, so one week she gave the child trucks, and the next week she gave the child dolls, and then trucks and dolls, and came back after a few weeks and found the dresses on the trucks. So this is the insanity that comes out of the chaos of confusion there. But that is the notion, so that, the purpose in that is so that I'm not responsible for what I've become. You are, because you patriarchal white people systemically built into the fabric of this culture the kind of things that made me what I am. So it's not my fault. So what do we have to do? Not change things. We can't just change things because you're still in power. We have to burn this thing down to the ground and replace that with a completely different group of people. So that's when you look at social justice, systemic racism, critical race theory, it is an effort to completely abolish everything we've known as life. One of the most interesting aspects of it is what's called research justice. I don't know if you've heard that. Research justice means if you're a white guy in a university, your research is unacceptable. You're on the outside. So if you take out the research of the white guy or the Asian guy, you blunt progress. I mean, it's absurdity, but that's how iconoclastic it is. That's how devastating it is, and that's why it's a burn down deal. It wants to burn down, it wants to end capitalism, private enterprise, like the Bolshevik Revolution. It wants to go back down to nothing. It doesn't have to rebuild, because when there's a flip and new power structure comes, they'll rebuild it the way they want. So how in the world evangelicals could buy into that and get seduced by feeling guilty for being white as if they mistreated people is just bizarre. Has everybody been treated the way they should be treated in the world? No. Has anybody been treated the way they should be treated in the world from a divine standpoint? Well, not yet, because we're still alive, and we're sinners enough. We should have been judged long ago. But just on a human level, the one thing the sinner wants to do is blame somebody else for his sin. And so when I started to attack this, I went through a series in Ezekiel 18 of individual responsibility. If we tell people they're not responsible for what they are, you just cut them off from the Savior. Because, if I don't come to grips with my own wretchedness, and that's a challenge anyway. Jesus said they hate me because I tell them their deeds are evil. So this aids and abets the sinner's pride, that I'm a victim, not a criminal, not a perpetrator. And I think people bought into it because they didn't want to be called a racist instead of responding biblically. And now that was a trap. That was a complete setup. Once you decided to buy into it and you start confessing your whiteness, whatever in the world that ridiculous. If you're going to confess something you really are guilty of. But that kind of virtue signaling, kind of spiritual grandstanding is absolutely meaningless, and it just aids and abets the notion that people are what they are because of somebody else. And you take a look at the African American community, and I've been involved in it, as many people know, and have a lot of experience. But if you're an illegitimate child, if your mother has aborted other children, if you have no father in the home, and you're growing up in a society of kids just running wild in the streets, if you'd hate to say this, but in Los Angeles, the level of illiteracy in the public schools is mind-boggling. What chance do you have? Now, you can't blame someone else for that. That culture needs to get a grip on itself. And so as a Christian, what I want to say is stop blaming someone else. Look, everybody's got issues in life. Take a look at where you are. Find the path to change that. And the change begins when you come to Christ. And so I just think this has ripped this country to ribbons, and it's just destroying churches, and it's destroying denominations, and it never should do that. But that's what it's done, because no one wants to be called a racist. You want to avoid that at all costs. But I think there are other ways that you can prove you have the heart of God, who is no respecter of persons. Racism or any kind of partiality is a sin. It's clearly a sin, and it's a bizarre sin to hate people because of some immutable characteristics about them, whether it's you hate because they're black, or you hate because they're Asians, or you hate because they're white. That's insanity. Why would you reduce everybody to that? But that's what's been done. In order to aid and abet the cause, they have to reduce everybody to an identity class, and then everybody in that identity class has to receive the same amount of hate. And then they have to bear the same amount of guilt. Then they have to make this endless confession. I watched this play out with Drew Brees, the quarterback in New Orleans, who made a very sensible statement and then couldn't repent enough. He just kept repenting and repenting and repenting. It was never enough.
That's right.
So this is the most destructive thing that I've ever seen happen to the evangelical movement. And the big question is, are these guys who got on the wrong side of this ever going to say, I was wrong? I need to repent, not of being white. I need to repent of being woke. Yeah. I need to repent of joining Black Lives Matter. I need to repent of being an aid and abet to Antifa. I need to repent of hating the police and wanting to defund an institution that God has ordained for the protection and preservation of life. Romans 13 says they're ministers of God. If they want to repent of something, What I would like to see, and what would make a massive difference in this nation, would be evangelical leaders repenting of siding with such a destructive movement. I can hope for that.
You will notice this one theme, this one thread that goes behind critical theory, critical race theory, and DEI. You will see this one theme, and also wokeism, and that's the next thing. And you will see all these go straight right back to Karl Marx, and it's very dangerous. As the scripture says, to whom much is given, much is required. Now, as we understand what these terms mean, critical theory, critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, also intersectionality, which we didn't cover much, but the idea of that one person could be experience multiple forms of racial injustice. If a person is black, at the same time the person is gay, they can experience multiple types of social injustice. And the idea of woke is really someone waking up to social injustice, like in America in the 60s and some of it in the Caribbean. But I must say, in the Caribbean, our society has passed that. We passed that long time. We don't need outside forces to bring us back into that, because all these theory do is just to create what is called reverse racism, acceptance to sin, and JAP standards. And by JAPing standards, we have lowered the bar. But what we need to do is, instead of bringing down the order, bringing down society, we need to go and hold people and lift them up the ranks of the ladder, lift them up to society, lift them up, set the standard that they can go up, they can achieve, instead of JAPing the standard. By JAPing the standards, we are not going anywhere. But instead, lift them up, especially in our education system. Lift up people, set a standard so people can be lifted up, not japped down. But as far as theology is concerned, God created us male and female in His image. We are all equal, and we do not put one gender against another gender. We are created, even though we are equal, we must recognize that there are differences between genders. Male is not a female, and a female is not a male. There is something called complementarianism. We complement each other. There's some things that unique to malehood, there's some things that unique to femalehood. There's some things that male can do that females cannot do, and there's some things that females can do that males cannot do. And we have to learn to embrace and accept the differences, not fighting against each other. Accept the fact that there are only two genders, male and female. And that ideology is the core of the family, the core unit, the nucleus of society, male and female, forming a society where children are being born, where children are being raised, where community, villages, virtues are being taught and developed, the family. Now with that said, I want to show you one last video and then we are going to wrap up this.
So here's what I did, and fathers, mothers, quick shout out to you before we get into all these stories. Rob, can you pull up this tweet? So, and I want to see how you're going to feel about this. If this upsets you, good, because it should. This is something I wrote a couple days ago. The madness with Pride Month has to stop. We have Father's Day one day. We have Mother's Day one day. Yet we have March, Bisexual Health Awareness Month, March 31st. International Transgender Day of Visibility, April 6th. Asexuality Day, first celebrated in 2021, April 26th.
So if you have no clue, April 6th is your day.
Yeah. What happened, Tom?
I said, so if you have no clue, April 6th is your day. So far.
International Lesbian Visibility Day. May 17th, International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. May 19th, a Gender Pride Day. May 22nd, Harvey Milk Day. May 24th, Pansexual and Pan-Romantic Visibility Day. What the hell does that mean? June, Pride Month, entire month. July 6th, Omnisexual Visibility Day. July 11th through the 17th, specifically 1 week, Non-Binary Awareness Week. July 14th, International Non-Binary Day. July 16th, International Drag Day. August 14th, Gay Uncle Day. Verify this if you think it's a joke. September 16th through the 22nd, Bisexual Awareness Week. September 23rd, Bisexual Visibility Day. October, LGBT History Month. October 11th, National Coming Out Day. October 20th, International Pronoun Day. October 24th, Asexual Awareness Week. November, Trans Awareness Month. November 6th, Transgender Parents Day. November 8th, Intersex Day of Remembrance. November 13th through the 19th, Trans Awareness Week. November 20th, Transgender Day of Remembrance. Are you tired yet? December 8th, Pansexual Pride Day. Folks, it's only June. We still have to go through these days for the rest of the year. 145, roughly, out of 365 days dedicated to LGBTQ. That's 39.7% of the year. Why? How did this make any sense? Meanwhile, we took God out from school. We took prayer out of school. We stopped saying the Pledge of Allegiance in school because that's offensive. Seriously, who's better for a healthy society? Promoting LGBTQ or marriage? Pro-family unit, husband and wives? If this is controversial, America has lost its mind. If the agenda is not to procreate, pushing LGBTQ agenda suppresses that. Gay men cannot procreate, folks. Lesbian couple cannot procreate. No one cares if you're gay, lesbian, trans, or bi. What you choose to do with your body after you're 18 is your choice, and we'll respect it. But this agenda must be accounted for why our national birth rate is the lowest it's ever been. America would be a powerhouse again if we flipped the script, using 145 days to promote the pro-family and give LGBTQ a day out of the year. This is enough. That would get us back to 2.5 birth rate and produce a better society. Feel free to tear apart this argument, but if you support it, have the courage to comment and retweet. God bless. May God bless us all. Anyways, and this thing went all over the place with commentary, agreeing, disagreeing. But you know what it was? 99% of people that read this, they were for it. 99% of people said, this is logical. How do you argue this? Okay. Tom, your thoughts on this? And by the way, we were at dinner. This took us 15, 20 minutes to write before we tweeted. And then you were there at dinner with me. I cut when we
you wrote it. We just proofread it.
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I think it shows exactly what the agenda is. What the agenda is, and it's rooted all the way down. Here I go. Here comes the rabbit hole. Get ready, guys. We're jumping in. We go all the way down to Marxism, breaking the American family, breaking the unity of the American spirit and the American society, and you just keep coming. That is their strategy here. Keep coming. So the reason all these additional days keep coming, and you saw how duplicative they were. International Pansexual Awareness Day, International Day of Week of Pansexual Visibility. I don't know what the difference between awareness and visibility are, but you see, they just keep coming, keep coming. This is the strategy, is to overwhelm the society with their agenda and where they want to take it. And this is how they're doing it.
Vinny.
And by the way, I thought it was a joke when you first started listing them. Like honestly, especially when you showed it to us. But here's a misconception. When you say when you put a tweet like that, Tom, and we know this, automatically the other side is like, oh, you have a phobia, you're scared, you're this. No. Especially with the pride parades, especially that happen in West Hollywood. What does you being butt naked in front of kids just out? What does that have to do with being proud of being gay? Gay people have been through so much to get to where, like, now in society, you're equal, you're chill, you can do whatever the hell anybody else can do. Why do you have to sexualize it in the streets? And like, what does that have to do with being gay? That's what I get so confused because I'm like, okay, you're gay, congratulations.
Caitlyn Jenner, with transgender, retweeted, "Gays Against Groomers said we fully support this message."
It's exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, because you don't have to be part of the community or not part of the community or part of the agenda to have common sense. So, on the surface, I'm assuming you said 90+% of the comments were positive.
Yes.
I'm assuming the comments that weren't, Pat's racist, Pat's sexist, he's homophobic, he's anti-trans. This is actually the beauty of actually somehow owning your own media company, because there's a lot of people would probably want to say stuff like this, but their fear of getting canceled, losing their job, being demeaned or being basically called all sorts of names, everything with that. But what you're saying is actually accurate. I brought this up. You tweeted this probably over the weekend, I want to say, because I brought it up to a buddy of mine who's pretty high up in the Democratic circles. And he goes, well, the Father's Day and the Mother's Day, you got to understand that those are national holidays. These aren't national holidays. I go, cute caveat right there, but these things still exist, buddy. Let's stay at the heart of the matter. There's all these ridiculous holidays.
He read it and he said that.
He read it. He goes, well, I get it, but understand that the Father's Day, these are national holidays. I said, but bottom line is this: everything that's going on with DEI and everything that's going on, there's corrections and there's overcorrections. Okay, cool. After the Harvey Milk, everything that was going on in the gay activist movement, I think it was Obama that made gay marriage legal, right? I think during his first term, he actually did not want to do that. In his second term,
Obama didn't do it. It was a John Roberts decision, which
thanks, Tom. Under the Obama administration. Thanks, Tom.
But it was Supreme Court under Obama that it
happened. Sure, correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
But the point is, it's reached the point of peak overcorrection where it should have a gay holiday, have a gay Pride Month.
Yeah.
Every single thing. Now it's like boom, 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 boom. Enough's enough.
You know what's crazy though? If I was still in Hollywood right now, no joke,
you'd be gay.
Because I
thought that's where you're going. Because Vinny, that's not cool. Just telling you, I see you.
By the way, Vinny, there's nothing wrong with it. Come on out.
What is today a day?
Vinny.
Is it National Coming Out Day, guys?
Come on out.
So like that tweet, I retweeted it. You realize if I was in LA and I was on a show and I retweeted that and they saw in Hollywood, I would have been fired.
You're finished.
Think about that. They would have told me,
you're finished.
Take it down or you're fired.
But that's my point.
That's a great point.
Well, wait till October 11th.
Okay, what's National
Do
Coming
it
Out
the
Day?
right way.
Yeah. All right, guys.
If you're going to do
keep it in the closet till then.
Listen,
we had Gina
Snacks.
Carano on, and she got canceled for far less than that.
Yeah, far less. So it's crazy. I mean, I'm obviously,
but it's free speech only if you're part of the right agenda.
Let me tell you what's great about common sense. It always prevails. Common sense eventually prevails. Sometimes it takes a day. Sometimes it takes an hour of a conversation with a person. Sometimes it takes a year. Sometimes it takes a decade. Sometimes it takes 50 years. But trust me, common sense prevails. It's undefeated. Common sense is purely undefeated. Try to say whatever you want about common sense. It's eventually going to dominate the marketplace. By the way, a couple things. If you're out there doing your part as a father, picking up your responsibilities, not giving it up to somebody else to do. You wake up every single morning thinking about how to raise better kids, thinking about how to raise better future leaders in the world. I applaud you. I respect you. I want to tell you what we're doing this weekend, Rob. If you want to pull it up, we just launched a new...
Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, Satan is a roaring lion. Satan, his tricks never change. All he does is mask himself and he come back around in other forms. We have to be vigilant. The Bible said we got to be vigilant. We have to walk circumspectly and see how Satan desire to bring down society with these ideas. Saints, I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope this video means something to us. Both on an educational level and on a theological, philosophical level. And let us view things as a country, as a culture, through the eyes of God. Now I must say, thank God to our educational system where God is still honored in our schools. And I must say to the ignorance of us, even myself included, when we hear these terms, diversity, equity, and inclusion, they sound good on the surface. But when you start to peel the skin and the layer underneath and really see the fruit that is beneath the layer, they look pretty on the outside like a manganiel, but inside is nothing but poison. So I hope this video awaken us, not in the idea of woke, but help us to see and help us as leaders, whether in church, in our education system, our ministers of government, that when international forces try to encourage us to embrace certain things, we just not listen to what the words on the surface means. Let us do our due diligence and go back and peel back the onion and go underneath the hood of the car, look at the engine and find out what really is the underlying angle and really understand the true motives. Saints, have a wonderful day. May the Lord's blessings be with you.
Copyrights reserved.